Yesterday, the Jerusalem Post published a report about how Iran test-fired a short-range anti-ship missile in the Strait of Hormuz during naval drills just this last week, and that Washington believes were aimed at sending a message as the United States reimposes sanctions on Tehran. These sanctions are killing them. They are killing them. U.S. Army General Joseph Votel said earlier this week the scope and scale of the exercises were similar to the ones Iran had carried out in the past. But the timing of this particular set of exercises was designed to get Washington's attention. This is reminiscent of what Jesus said when he answered the disciples' question about what will be the signs of your return and of the end of the age. And Jesus sort of listed a number of things that will take place, among which were that nation would rise against nation, and there would be wars and threats of wars. Iran is backed into a corner. They got the noose tightening around their neck economically. And now they're threatening concerning the Straits of Hormuz. Votel told reporters at the Pentagon, it's pretty clear to us that they were trying to use that exercise to send a message to us that as we approach this period of the sanctions here, that they had some capabilities. Iran has been furious over U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to pull out of an international agreement on Iran's nuclear program and reimpose sanctions on Tehran. Senior Iranian officials have, here's an interesting word, warned/threatened the country would not easily yield to a renewed U.S. campaign to strangle Iran's vital oil exports. Last month, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, backed President Hassan Rouhani's suggestion that Iran may block Gulf oil exports of its own if its own exports are stopped. Did you catch that? That's another detail, isn't it? Is that not the spoil that is in Israel? The natural gas and the oil? Both of which Russia, Iran, Turkey, et al. All need in order to survive. Well, as I was thinking about these developments, I began to see this as a textbook case of how one will act or react when they're backed into a corner, and Iran in particular is getting it from all sides, even feeling pressure from their own people, get this, who instead of chanting death to America and death to Israel, are now chanting death to the dictator. This according to Fox News, who reported on how the U.S. sanctions are increasing economic unrest in Iran. It seems that days of unprecedented protests aimed at Iran's sluggish economy, along with, quote, biting sanctions imposed by President Trump, are ramping up pressure on the Islamic Republic's ruling class. They're in trouble, and they know it. And they got to do something. Fox News goes on to report that videos circulating on social media purportedly taken from inside Iran show thousands of protesters marching through the streets. In one video, crowds leaving a soccer match are heard yelling, "Death to the dictator, death to Khamenei, death to Rouhani, and Islamic regime must get lost," according to a translation tweeted by a Middle East analyst. By the way, let me parenthetically say, and this is just, such good news. So many Iranians by the multitudes are coming to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ in light of this, and even in spite of this. And I praise the Lord for that. The Iranian people. Well, please know that it's not just Iran, but Russia and Turkey as well. I mention this on occasion, but And I'm no mathematician, far from it. In fact, I never really did that well in school with math or algebra. But I would just be really interested to know what the statistical probabilities are that 3 nations that are listed in a prophecy written 2,500 plus years ago would all simultaneously, one in concert with the other, be on the brink of economic ruin at the same time. And then the statistical probabilities of, at that exact time, have Israel be so prosperous at the same exact time. I don't know, I'll ask Tom. He'll probably come up with that number, and it'll make my hair hurt, what little hair I have left. But anyway. So Yahoo Finance published a report, this is just on Thursday, about the U.S. sanctions slamming the Russian ruble and tumbling Turkey's lira. Let me quote the report. New U.S. sanctions against Moscow drove down Russia's ruble, while worries that Turkey was sliding into a full-blown economic crisis battered the lira on Thursday. But, and this is interesting, global equity markets largely shrugged off the turmoil to edge higher. Could it be, as we just mentioned in the aforementioned promise of Genesis 12:2 and 3, could it be that God is blessing America because America is blessing Israel? Maybe that's a rhetorical question. Make no mistake about it, Russia will not sit idly by, and according to Ynet News, regards this as an economic war if the United States imposed a ban on banks or a particular currency. You know what I love about this president? What I love about President Trump is that nobody knows what he's going to do. But here's what they do know. They don't know what he's going to do, but they know that he will do something. I like that. So Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was quoted as saying, "I would not like to comment on talks about future sanctions, but I can say one thing. If some ban on banks' operations or on the use of one or another currency follows, it would be possible to clearly call it a declaration of economic war." Economic war. And it would be necessary, it would be needed to, here's that word, react to this war economically, politically, or, listen, if needed, by other means. And our American friends need to understand this, he added. Them are fighting words. Them are fighting words from a country that is being backed into an economic corner and could potentially be on the verge of an economic collapse. Maybe this is another topic for another time, but I hope you understand that during the 7-year tribulation, there's going to be a one-world economy, which implies that all of the world's economies, all of the world's currencies are completely done away with, which would infer that there is some sort of an economic collapse on a global scale in order to usher in this one world economic system. And it will come by way of this mark from the Antichrist, without which no one will be able to buy or sell. And I hope you understand that the technology for that is already here and has been. It's just a matter of the green light to go ahead with it. This is where it's all going. Well, here's where I'm going with this. I want you to think this through with me. And see if you agree with me when I say this. Wouldn't it stand to reason that at some point, something has to give? And soon? Wouldn't you agree that currently, geopolitically, this is unsustainable? And by unsustainable, I mean it's that proverbial rubber band that can only be stretched so far and for so long before it snaps. It's my belief that these nations specifically are being stretched too far and for too long, and it won't be long before it snaps and they have to make their move. It's very interesting to me, talking about, again, the details in Ezekiel 38, of which there are many, that God says he himself will put a hook, turn them around, draw them in via Syria from the north, from the far north, and bring them in to attack Israel by land, from the north, to take a spoil. Suffice it to say, everything is lined up perfectly. I don't know how it could be any more exact. I don't know how it can be any more perfect. And I'll take it a step further and suggest, and I want you to think about this too, wouldn't it also stand to reason that it couldn't be at this point for very much longer? Look at how much has happened just in the last 3 years, and now fast forward the clock to even 3 years from now. Would all of this still be in place? No, I don't believe so. What are you saying, Pastor? You're saying the rapture's going to happen the next? Please don't do that. No, I'm not. No man knows the day or the hour, but here's what we can know. We are very close. We are very close. I don't think it's possible to overstate the urgency of the hour in which we live today. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and even how soon. And certainly, there are many who believe that the rapture will take place prior to or even in concert with the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38's prophecy. And if that's the case, and it absolutely could be, then the time is at hand. Because if we're seeing things that will ultimately be fulfilled at the beginning or during the 7-year tribulation beginning to come to pass now, and the rapture is before the 7-year tribulation, and it is, and it has to be, then wouldn't that mean that we're that much closer? And if we're that much closer, then wouldn't that also mean that it's incumbent upon every single one of us to be ready? And I'm talking chiefly to Christians. I think about what the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Rome about waking up. He's writing to the church, to Christians. Wake up! Wake up from your slumber. You're sleeping. You need to wake up. The time is at hand. Our salvation draws nearer now than when we first believed. Get up and get dressed and put off the deeds of darkness. And even list them with specificity there. It's time for a sleeping church to wake up. It's time for a drowsy Christian to wake up. The time is at hand. The hour is late.